who was it that told us that pain should be hidden? Who taught us that tears were weakness? Who taught us that as a man, we should keep everything bottled up until something inside of us breaks? Because if we're honest tonight, many of us have been taught just that, particularly in the African American community. Men have often been conditioned to believe that strength means silence, that resilience means repression, that emotional expression somehow diminishes our masculinity. But the truth is, silence has been costing us. It's costed some of us our relationships. It's costed some of us our families. And many times, you know what? It's costing us in our bodies. Tonight, we're going to talk about something that many people don't realize, Pastor Jones, Elder Wiggins. Tonight, we're going to talk about how mental stress does not just stay in the mind, but mental stress, it travels throughout the body. And it shows up in places that many of us never expected. It can show up in the form of high blood pressure. It can show up as heart disease. It can show up as chronic pain. And sometimes it shows up in ways that make you stop your whole life and ask a question. Wait a minute, what's going on? What is my body trying to tell me? And that's part of the reason we're having this conversation tonight. Because science has shown us something that many of our grandmamas knew. They knew this a long time ago. When stress builds up inside of us, the body reacts. Listen, let me tell you like this. Deep inside of the brain, there's something called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the body's alarm. It's the brain's alarm system. It is designed, its job is to detect danger. And when it thinks something is threatening you, it sends a signal throughout the body that tells your body, prepare to survive. And when that happens, what happens next is your body begins to release cortisol. And what cortisol does is it starts to increase or elevate the heart rate. It releases this hormone that causes stress. Its job is to heighten alertness. In other words, it prepares you for fight or flight. But here's the problem with that. It can't tell the difference between a tiger in the jungle, or if you're dealing with emotional trauma. And so when the body does not understand that, it begins to work against you. And I'm not speaking tonight theoretically. I'm speaking personally, because a couple of weeks ago I was supposed to do this show. And I want to apologize for not being able to do it, because I've had my guest on hold for 2 weeks, and I'll bring them in just a minute. But a couple of weeks ago, I woke up with severe sciatic nerve pain. Went to the emergency room. First I went to the urgent care. Then I went to the emergency room. And then I found myself literally saying, what in the world is going on in my body? Now, if you've never experienced sciatica before, let me tell you something. That pain is no joke. Because it starts in the lower back, shoots down through your leg, gets in your ankle, and sometimes it feels like your body is literally rebelling against you. And I found myself asking these questions. I kept saying, what in the world is going on? Because the doctors can explain the medical side of it, but sometimes life has a way of teaching you a deeper lesson. And I've come to believe that sometimes what God does is he allows us to experience certain things in our body so that as we understand them, as we understand those lessons, we're able to teach those same lessons. And I began to think about something. What if that sciatic flare-up was my body telling me something about stress? What if my nervous system had been holding on to more than I realized? What if the tension of responsibility and leadership expectations and life had quietly pushed my body into that fight or flight mode that we were just talking about? And suddenly I realized this conversation about mental health wasn't just theoretical anymore. It's now personal. So which is why tonight's conversation is going to be powerful, because we're not just talking about emotions. We're talking about survival. We're talking about how generations of men have been taught to carry things alone. And we're talking about how silence has been mistaken for strength. And we're talking about how breaking that silence might actually be the beginning of healing. And tonight, I'm honored to have special guests joining us in the conversation. I have Pastor Ray Evans of the Southside Missionary Baptist Church in Columbus, Mississippi, and Brother David Dwyer. And together, we're going to unpack some of these myths that men have carried for years. We're going to talk about why men struggle with emotional pain. We're going to talk about how we struggle with cultural expectations and how they shape our mental health, and why vulnerability is not a weakness, and how unresolved stress can impact not only our minds, but our physical health. Because the reality is this, and I'm going to bring them in: the mind and the body are not separate systems. They are deeply connected. And when the mind is overwhelmed, the body often cries out. And if we keep ignoring the signals long enough, eventually the body will force us to pay attention. So tonight we're asking the question: who taught us to suffer in silence? And more importantly, how do we unlearn that lesson? So how do we create a new generation of men who understand that emotional awareness is not weakness, but wisdom? That vulnerability is not fragility, but courage. And the healing begins the moment we decide that silence is no longer the answer. Stay with us tonight. If you have not shared this, go ahead and share it, because the conversation might challenge some old beliefs, but it might also help somebody realize something very important. You don't have to carry everything yourself. So tonight, I am honored to have with us, first of all, my friend and my brother, Pastor Ray Evans. Dr. Evans, how you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm glad to have you in the building tonight. He's going to bring the pastoral perspective, the faith leadership, and emotional health and ministry. He is also a counselor. Well, he's over counselors in the state of Mississippi. He's over about 100 and some counselors. So he is trained in this area. So I wanted to get his perspective, and every time he comes on, he always blesses us. So I have him in, and let me go ahead. Well, I'm gonna ask you one question first before I bring Brother Dwyer in. Okay, let's start here. Pastor Evans, in many Black communities, men were raised to believe showing emotion meant weakness. From a pastoral and a spiritual perspective, where do you think that belief came from?
I think it came from a space and time where um, it was just not considered manly to express any emotions. But
Mm.
it wasn't just the negative emotions or emotions that have a negative connotation. I have a friend who said that he had 4 daughters, and they were up in age before he could tell them "I love you."
Wow.
Thought that was not a manly thing. The same brother told me when his daughters were born, he was never there. Her
Mm.
mother and he was at home, he would get the call, "You have a healthy baby child." So I think part of it was just a misguidance in society that did not allow men to emote or to be in touch with their feelings. And maybe it came along when the roles were more defined. This is the role of a man, this is the role of a woman. We got that confusion from somewhere, and it had to come from us. It didn't come from God.
Okay. And let me put that before y'all in the chat, because y'all are awfully quiet. Except my people on YouTube, they're over here talking real good. But my Facebook people aren't saying anything. I really want y'all to participate in the conversation as well. Where do you think that myth came from? The same question I just asked Pastor Evans. I want to make that question for the chat. From why do you think men were raised to believe showing emotion was weakness, and especially brothers that are in the chat and sisters? Some of y'all have had to assume the role of raising young boys on your own. And some of you might have said to them, boys don't cry, or boys shouldn't cry. Where do you think that myth came from? Where do you think that myth came? And you know what? Let's get Dwyer on in here and because Dwyer been here 20 minutes before to do sound check. So I appreciate him. Let me get him in here and then we're gonna we're gonna go ahead and get this conversation going even more. So let's get him in here. I want this layout right here. That's the one I want. See if I can make it work. We'll see if I can make it work. It's close enough. No, it ain't. Is that it? Y'all, I'm trying new stuff tonight. So if it don't work, charge my to my head, not to my heart. Whatever. I like the other layout better. We're gonna take this off. We're gonna take this off. Hold on, let me put y'all back where I had y'all a minute ago. Where we at? All right, there we go. I like that better. All right. So, Brother Dwyer, did you just hear the question I just asked Pastor Evans? The question was, and I'm gonna ask you from your perspective. Where do you think the idea came from that if men were started believing that showing emotion meant weakness?
If I'm being transparent, I'm sorry. Good evening, fine gentlemen. How y'all doing today?
Great.
Good.
Oh,
I think to honestly answer this question, I have to say from a place of ignorance. You can't teach what you don't know. And so when you look at parents, grandparents, so forth and so on, they literally taught what they knew, and what they knew wasn't centered around emotional intelligence. It wasn't centered around spiritual intelligence. It wasn't centered around how to create a family to where you have the ability to have open communication, teaching both the boy child and the girl child the ability to communicate effectively, but doing so in a very tactful and respectful manner. And so ideally, when you look at it, a lot of men end up emulating what they see. If they seen a father in the home, then they pretty much, in some degree, try to mimic what they've seen to a certain degree, whether it
mhm.
worked or whether it didn't work. If it didn't work, they tried to do the things that worked, that they felt worked, because at the end of the day, they seen what daddy was doing did not work with mama. But if it did work, then that became their blueprint to success. And then from that point forward, they tried to figure it out. So again, I go back to parents, because I think parenting ultimately is one of the biggest things that create a lot of this dysfunction, I believe, when you start looking at modern day families.
And man, and that's a good point. And I think people really, really underestimate the power. I'm gonna say the power and the value of parenting. And for most of us, parenting is on the job training, right? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we had the benefit of mama and daddy. You know what I'm saying? But Doc, it's some things I might not have liked about how mom and daddy raised me. Certain things, I might not like the fact that I had to sit at the dinner at the table. I had to eat onions in my eggs or something. I might not have liked. So if I raise my children, I'm gonna raise mine to be a little different from that, right? And if I raise them to be different than that, then I'm experimenting. And so it becomes on the job training. And so sometimes, and I heard this, Pastor Evans, you can tell me if you agree with this or not. I've heard that it's been said that a sometimes a bad parent is a child's first enemy.
Wow. It is probably the first person they learn to have negative feelings toward and not know what to do with those feelings.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I've worked with a lot of young teens and there's males who were angry and they didn't know why they were angry. So
I,
it wasn't something that happened outside of the home. It happened in the home, but they didn't know how to verbalize it.
Man, that's crazy. Man, I'm gonna tell you, man. My pops told me once. My dad used to substitute teach for years in the North Rock School District. He and one day there's a little boy that was really belligerent. He was really belligerent. He was really belligerent. And so my dad went to talk to him. And when he went and talked to the young man, what he discovered after having a conversation with him is the mama told him right before he came to school she wished he had never been born. That's his mama saying this to him, right? And so as a 17, 16, 17, 18-year old, how do you handle those emotions? You know, I used to, I probably sucked at parenting for a little while. I started learning from my ways. At one point, I used to see my daughter in the morning when I'm rushing her. She didn't respond well, and she was crying. And I thought about, I said, why would I put her on the bus crying? So I corrected that quick. How that Brother Dwight, if your mama told you on your way to school that she wishes she never had you, how do you handle that?
Um, let's be honest, and I want to make this real, because I don't think it's a large population that experience that, but I do want to come back to that as well. But for the most part, what I do believe is more reality to a lot is that when parents, whether mama or daddy, um, they did not, experience a joyful time in their relationship with the other parent. And so they themselves have emotions that they have bottled up. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, it comes out.
comes
And
out.
that emotion, when it comes out in proximity of that child, they become the recipient of that emotion that that parent is given. So they may not have said that that parent that they don't wish, they believe they wish that child wasn't born, but they may say something that makes that child feel bad about their father. They may
Wow.
say something that you look just like your father. You remind me of your. Now I'm speaking this from experience.
Wow.
You remind me of him. I can't say the things that were actually said back then. Not
Yeah.
on here. I might get you
Yeah.
counseling if I say it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
real. Now let's go to the extreme of what you said, right? Because you got to look at the relationship dynamics between a boy and his mother. That is literally the introduction to the first person of the opposite sex. That's
Yeah.
the person that he believes is supposed to love him, regardless of anything. If I get into any trouble, I can always call my mama. She gonna always receive me regardless of
Mm.
anything. But when you say that, now you have robbed me of that opportunity. You have taken that away from me because at the end of the day, I can't depend on you in that regard. And let's look at it from this dynamics. Let's just say all three of us are high school friends. You got that in your mother. You know, uh, um, my brother here in the middle, he probably got both mama and daddy in the house. I just
Mm.
got mom in the house. And my mama told me that I remind her of my daddy. And she don't even like my daddy.
She don't
So
even
what does
like
that say about me?
that. Mhm.
So now not only am I dealing with those emotions, but I'm also dealing with the emotions that I'm hiding while I'm around y'all because to some degree, I'm somewhat jealous and envious for what you guys got that I don't have.
Wow. Wow. That's and listen, and y'all listen. If you've not liked or loved or hearted this show yet, please do it, and then share it. This conversation is going to go deep tonight, and this is where we're going with the intellectual stew. We call it the intellectual stew for a reason. And I'm sorry if I don't talk about some of the trendy topics. I'm talking about things that I really want to are going to help our community, help us heal. And I bring people on who have been through things. I've been through things. I got testimonies I can't tell that I won't tell, but their experience and those experiences have shaped me to be who I am. And I love the fact of who I might, I might, what the old folks say, I might not be all that I should be, but I thank God I'm not all that I used because I'm on this journey. I'm on this path to better. So let's talk about this because Pastor Evans, you deal with it. But let's look at Chauncey Kelsey's comment here. Chauncey said, I grew up the only child in a single parent household with my mom. And this is when, and I want you to address this, Ray. He said, I didn't feel like I had an outlet to talk about things. Talk from the perspective of the young boy being raised by his mother, but doesn't feel like he has an outlet.
Well, sometimes children become the sounding board to mom's struggles
Mm.
and everything that mom is experiencing. You almost pull into adulthood a child because the information that you're sharing, the feelings that you are expressing, they can't process them, but now they have an effect on the child. Sometimes they mirror the child. There are many young men who cannot stand the sight of their father when they never had a relationship with him. They just went based upon what the mother said,
Wow.
and so that time is critical. That period in which the mind is still developing, and yet they're getting inundated with just one message that is not a positive message, and it also has a message that's reflected in their lives. So if my daddy was no good and I look like my dad, I act like my dad, then what does that say about me in my mother's eyes?
That's deep. So let's now you didn't open up a kind of different kind of can of worms. Now I got to go a whole different direction with this because in those moments, and Dwyer, you kind of hit on this a moment ago. As a teenager, as a developing young man, what we end up doing is we end up at times, and I'm sure you can attest to this, Ray. We end up writing unwritten rules. And these aren't boundaries yet. These are rules. Rules are things that we live by. Boundaries are things we learn to execute as we get older. You know, I'm not going to let you cross to this boundary. But sometimes we write rules. When I was younger, I used to beg for a spanking.
Wow.
I begged for a spanking because my punishment, if I got a bad grade, was 9 weeks in the room. That's solitary confinement. You know what I'm saying? And my mom, she didn't mean any harm. You know, she was saying, get your grades up. You know, that's my parents did. They were like, get your grades up. That's what you're supposed to do. But did it take 9 weeks? And then what happened in those 9 weeks is I started developing these unwritten rules. Like, does anybody listen to me? Do I have a voice? If every time I do something as small as get a C, am I going to get sent to my room, and when can I come out? All these rules start to become unwritten rules, and whether we know it or not, we start to establish ourselves how we live according to those written rules. So as a child, and I'm raised in a house where I don't have a voice, I'm being told, you know, like Chauncey just said a minute ago, I don't have anyone to talk to in my house. What rules am I establishing, Dr. Dwyer?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you, because I can relate to that, brother. I think at some point you just look for some type of rules to create to where you start to, I don't know, feel good about yourself, if you will. And again, you just try to find a way to maneuver within that confined space that was created for you, because you're not being created, you're not being given the latitude, right, to do this, and you're not given the latitude to take these risks and things of that nature. And so within that confined space that has been constructed for you, you try to find some degree of comfort. And then you get older, now it gets you to the point to where those comforting skills that you created for yourself, now those comforting skills now become the rule that you live and govern your life by. Now, going back to, because I like where my brother went a few seconds ago, the formative years, the early formative years, the stages of child development, if you will. When you start looking at those stages of child development now create the blueprint of what that young adult male now believes becomes the blueprint and structure of his life. So, in
Yeah.
essence, now within the space that he has created for himself, he is trying to find companionship, if you will. Because again, they don't know, we didn't know any better at a young age. So you're trying to find companionship in all actuality. And unfortunately, you end up, unbeknownst to you, you end up sabotaging those relationships because let's just be honest, she wasn't raised like I was raised. So now we get into those issues, those problematic concepts that we create for ourselves. And then what ends up coming out is anger, frustration, lashing out, so forth and so on, because you were never given the proper tools as a young man to learn how to maneuver this space that we
That's
call
good.
life.
That's
And
good.
because you were never given those tools, now you feel like the only response you got is the exact same thing you seen growing up. The emotional irregulation, the lashing out, the verbal abuse, and all those other great things. And then you go on and you end up doing that to somebody else.
Let's follow that up, Ray Evans. Go ahead. Follow up what he just said, please.
Again, we establish these rules based upon what we are taught, what is said to us, what we see. And there's no guarantee that they will be productive in our lives or helpful. Sometimes these rules are very unique, very strange, because they're just limited to our small world. And
Yeah.
a lot of that is seen when we enter relationships and we have these unique rules that really other people can't relate to. So it complicates our lives even in adulthood because that's what we have.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what we are. You know, when you talk about the grades, we know what leads to good things happening, what things lead to bad things happening, and that's not the case in everyone's life. So
Yeah.
it can be very confusing to a young man, but it could set up tendencies that you go back to even in adulthood.
Yeah. That's really good. And that's what I want us to understand. Hold on. I did something I wasn't supposed to do. I'm trying to do too much over here. All right, there we go. We back to where we were. I'm trying to upload another overlay. I'm multitasking. Y'all got to forgive me. But no, you are 100% right. And I get it. I get it. I get it because, and I didn't understand it until, I wrote that book last year called Stuck on the Couch, but it didn't become real because Dwyer, when I got off the couch, I ended up going in the bedroom. You know what I'm saying? So it didn't make any sense to get out of one situation and then go into another situation. But that's what we do sometimes. Dwyer, from the practical side of life, let me ask you a question. How does emotional silence affect men day to day?
I appreciate the, and I'm gonna go a little far left if you don't mind. I appreciate the topic of emotional silence, but I like to call it more so along the lines of emotional constipation.
It
And,
is.
and why do I call it that? Because you get built up. You are taught at a very young age, little boys don't cry.
Mm,
You're taught at a very young age to get up, wipe it off, and get back in the game. Don't worry about it. You're taught at a very young age when you have a failed relationship that, you can't really talk about it. You don't necessarily have, like you just heard previously, you don't have the outlet to talk about it. You didn't have your dad there to talk about how he processed it when he was young. So now it gets to the point where you get older and it's like, you can't express it. You don't feel you have you don't feel you have the space to express it. You really don't feel like people care, if I'm just being completely transparent. And
mm,
so it has nothing to do with whether or not somebody else actually said that. It's really what you believe. And then if you're not literally fulfilling your utilitarian value in the environment in your household, it's like, what's your purpose? We've heard it before. What do men do? Well, you describe men. Men provide and protect. That's it. That's all I'm good for is provision and protection. So
yeah.
it's like now, as long as I'm doing that, everything is fine. So that being said, do I have the space to talk about I had a bad day at work? Do you really care whether or not I had a bad day at work? Or at the end of the day, I'm having some issues or concerns with our oldest child, him being a man and things of that nature, who, by the way, is an adult child. I just say it that way, right? As my adult child, him being a man, I'm struggling in that space to try to transition from fatherhood to more of an advisor in his life because it's different. So when you look at it, that emotional constipation becomes a buildup. And what ends up happening when that buildup continues to prolong, it comes out like a volcano. And when it
Yeah.
comes out, now what I'm teaching you, ideally, is that you don't want me to express myself because you think every time I express myself, it becomes an explosion. To where the reality of it is that I was taught to keep it all in. And then at the end of the day, when I can't keep it all in, this is what it looks like. So I mean, I don't want to keep going on and on and on because I can as it pertains to this, but I think it's really problematic when we live in a world where the world itself, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but where the world itself doesn't want to hear the voice of the man, they just want the utilitarian value of the man.
Utilitarian value of it. Go ahead, Evans. I saw you. He was about to explode. Go ahead, Evans.
I think that is a wide ranging problem
Mm,
because when any man starts talking about his feelings, that's when his manhood is called into question. When we continue in silence, then we're this person that no one knows. So
mm,
both ways. But no,
okay.
I wrote this down to confront through dialogue. So many times it takes a level of emotional courage to talk about those things that burden us the most.
Mm,
And if we have never had that luxury of expressing ourselves in that manner, that is a very, very difficult thing to do. And it does not happen overnight. And it does not happen with a partner who questions your strength when you give her vulnerability.
mm.
It has to be a safe place.
That's good. And listen, y'all in the chat, please do me a favor. If you've not, you can't see his divine appointment. Are we all on this? Are we? Can y'all see us? Can y'all hear us? Uh, listen. It's that's good. Y'all said it. Everybody in the chat though, do me a favor. Like this, like, share, please. Heart this comment. Make this a show. We still got a little ways to go, and I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm on both on the regular side. You and see all of them. Okay. Um, I had a friend of mine tell me today that a couple of weeks ago he had to go to the emergency room, and when he went to the emergency room, his blood pressure was like at 195. Oh, okay, I got you. Oh, y'all can't see us all on the mobile side. I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know how to fix that. Oh, okay, I do see what you're talking about over here on the mobile side. That's what that is. How I do that? How I fix that? Girl, you just taught me something. Hold on, let me try something. Oh, shucky ducky quack quack. Can you? Now you can't see us like that either, can you? Now you can see it. No, you can't see us all right there either. I don't know how to fix it. I'm gonna have to work on that one for next week, y'all. I apologize. I apologize. Is that better? Yeah, she got me all mixed up now. I'm gonna hide this because y'all got me nervous over here now. They got me nervous, Evans. They got me nervous. I like the three I had at first, but I don't know. I see what she's saying now. But anyway, what was I? Oh yeah, I had a friend of mine. He went to the hospital last week. 195 blood pressure, 195 over 100 and something. And they got his blood pressure back down. And when he went home, he was talking to his wife and saying, hey, some of the stressors that I'm experiencing are in the house, da 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 da. And first of all, I kind of got on him for telling me his business, because I don't really like, people telling me, you got problems in your house, you work that out at home. Don't really come telling everybody your business. But he knows I'm a safe space. So anyway, he told me what he told me. And he said she started arguing with him and started saying that no, that wasn't the case. Ladies, let me ask you a question. Is that a good time to argue? He just got home from the hospital. Blood pressure 195 over 100 and something. And you want to say, if he's telling you, if you ask me the issue and I tell you what the issue is, then don't tell me that that's not the issue. Does that make sense? Anyway, let's go on. We talk about this. Go ahead, Evans. You agree to say something. I can see it in your facial expression.
It makes all the sense in the world, but having the control to actually deny self and allow someone else the safety of being able to express themselves. Sometimes that's a struggle, to give is sometimes a struggle, because most times we think about ourselves. So if I turn that around and I have been probably where the wife has been, and the first time I hear something negative, I don't think about what they've expressed. I think about how it makes me feel. And I just think that is something that we have to mature through, or two, because that's just a natural reaction, instead of being in the moment with someone, being supportive of them.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Let's get back on this emotional silence piece of being, as my friend has called it, emotional constipation, because we do retreat. And I didn't realize I did it for years. For years, I probably was a ambivert. More. I don't think I was ever an extrovert, but I think I might have been an ambivert, somewhere in the middle. But over the past several years, especially after my divorce and the pandemic and everything that went on, I was alone so much. I went so long without talking that at a certain point, I didn't even want to talk at all. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And people were thinking I was arrogant, and people think I was mean. I just was I didn't want to talk. I had nothing to say. And in part of that time, because of everything that I had lost, Dwyer, between the family and everything, I was so embarrassed. I was so depressed. I didn't want to be seen until I presented a better version of myself. So if I was quiet, maybe you didn't see me. Maybe if I was quiet, I could get in, get out, and get back to my couch before y'all caught it, right? Because truth be told, because if I talk, guess what? Now I've told. Oh God. If I talk, now I've told it, because now I've shared it, and now I'm responsible for saying it. You understand what I'm saying? Because when you put those declarations, you put those pieces out there, now you got to live up to what you said. And if I don't say anything, I ain't got to live up to it. I'm good. And I probably lived beneath my expectations for a long time because I stopped talking. And I'm looking at myself as, I'm thinking I'm hurting somebody else, but truth of the matter is, I'm really hurting myself. And Evans, because you've been my unofficial counselor for the last 5 or 6, 7, 8 years, because when I have a problem, I call Mississippi, I call Evans, and he never not talks to me, but he talks me through it. Now explain that that process that I was going through where I didn't want to talk, Dr. Evans.
I think it's a very common place to be when you
Really?
want to be just ignored for a while until things come back to a better place for yourself. Uh,
Mm.
and I can speak from experience. Married for 30 years, did not talk in my marriage because it usually led to a greater issue or
Wow.
an argument. So if I could process stuff within my mind and make sense of it, I just didn't. Well, the only thing about that, it kept me right where I was and never allowed me to grow as a man. And I accept responsibility, for that. Now, the one thing I know I have to do is be expressive of what I feel, what I think, and as I said before, it's a level of emotional courage to put it out there.
Wow.
But now I'm willing to do it because the loss was so great until I don't want to experience that again.
I got to bring the ladies in on that conversation right there. And ladies, I want y'all to hear what he just said. And I want y'all to talk in the chat if you would. Like I said, they talking good over here on they're talking real good over here on YouTube. They are. I wish I could put all the comments together. But Evans just said he was married 30 years. And he said a lot of times he didn't talk in his marriage. And what I heard in that, sometimes we don't talk, and I could relate to that. But I ain't had that much problem in my relationship. I ain't gonna lie. I can't say that was my testimony, but I've heard people with that testimony. He's saying he didn't talk to keep the peace. Because sometimes when we do talk, it leads to confusion. Ladies, how do you feel? How do you feel hearing that? I really would prefer, I mean, especially those in relationships, those who have been married, not somebody who's just from the ideology or the idea of being. I'm talking about a really good, healthy, realistic, non-delusional marriage, not the not the ideology that this figment of that we put out here, of these ideologies that we have out here. I'm talking about a real, if you're not Christian, that's fine, but I'm a moral. How about that? A moral marriage, where there's mutuality, there's love, there's responsibility. And then you hear your husband say that he doesn't talk on purpose, and the reason why he's talking is because he doesn't talk, is because he wants to keep the peace. Now, he pays the bills. He shows up for the children. He sleeps beside you every night. Y'all show up at functions together. Y'all do all of these things, and he loves you. But he don't know how to love you, because if he loves you the way he's been loving you and he talks, then in that moment, he has to be prepared for the backlash. You want to follow up on that, Ray?
I'm just writing down the skills of Delilah, but not the spirit. Remember what Samson said. He was able to lay his head on her lap.
Hold on. Dwyer, you ain't never experienced one of these, but my boy, but Evans about to get one right now. You ready, Evans? Hold on, here you go. No, when you say a line like that, you got to close, Doc. I'm sorry, it's time to tune up. I got to hear your voice change. He said the skills of Delilah, but not the spirit of Delilah.
Yes.
Say that for the unchurched, those that don't know the story of Delilah. Break that down for us, sir.
Samson found a place where he could rest. He found a place where he could forget about everything else. And the difference, the issue was not her skill level. The difference was her spirit, because she did not care enough to protect him. But she wanted the silver. She wanted what could enhance her life. She had the skills to enhance his life.
Yeah.
And in return, her life be enhanced. So for a person, and I can share this with you, not wanting to come home is not a good feeling.
No, it ain't.
But sometimes that's what I felt in the past, because I knew that we had to deal with something, and always it wasn't going to be a productive conversation.
That's sad. That's sad. That's sad. Crystal and Crystal, we understand women go through a lot of the same things. You know, we always try to act like we try to figure out who's the most traumatized. And I don't understand why we have that comparison. I think we're all traumatized. We just need to work on bonding instead of battling, because we all go through it. But this show so happens to be about men's mental health. But like I told you all in the advertisements, ladies, come in, eavesdrop. If you can pick something up from it, please, ma'am, by all means, pick up. And you are welcome to be a part of. You see him too, don't you? Come on, Dr. Dwyer. He's sitting there smiling. He ready to talk. I can see him. He's in the starting block like he about to run a 6'3", 60-yard dash. Come on, Doc. Go ahead and say something about what we just talked about.
Hey, man, I'm just being patient. I like to listen. I love that comparison, that analogy, if you will. I think all in all, and I kind of started talking about this earlier. I think all in all, we have the equipment for relationships. We're just not equipped for the relationship. So we lead with the equipment, and we don't necessarily get the equipping. That is always the problem. I don't care where you go, in whatever capacity it is. Even if you look at what you're called to do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought you was changing your voice. I was
Now,
gonna give it to you. Okay, the equipping and not versus the equipment. Say that again, please. Please say that some more.
we have the equipment, but we're not equipped for it. And it's just like when you look at what you're called to do. Sure, you may have the awareness, but there's still a process that you go through before you actually step into that equipping, that actual calling that you're called to do. There is a process to get there. You have to be equipped. And so even in we look at our younger years, and a lot of us we kind of rushed it, if you will. Let's just be honest. Let's be completely
Okay.
honest. We kind of rushed it a little bit. We got married a little early, right? And because we got married early, we weren't equipped, men and women both, we weren't equipped for the mantle of marriage in which we kind of adorn. Because at the end of the day, if we don't necessarily understand the true purpose of what marriage is all about, then how can we actually display that to the world? So now we actually get into these marriages, and it's all about what what is it, the the gospel of Janet Jackson, what have you done for me lately? That has nothing to do with it. And so that's what you do. You go back and forth, you go back and forth. And like, everybody's mentioned, you're sitting in your own home, intimidated and quiet. Because at the end of the day, and I just speak from a man's perspective, at the end of the day, you've all heard it, happy wife, happy life. So now I spend a large portion of my time trying to figure out how to make her happy. But under that assumption, does that mean that my happiness is null and void? Because that's the space that we move in. So it's all about the Valentine's Day, it's all about the anniversary, her birthday, and all these other holidays that's not holy days, right? And we actually do these things because if I don't do it, there's going to be some emotional backlash. And I don't want to deal with the emotional backlash. So I get, in some degree manipulated into doing the thing. It's not a direct manipulation, it's an indirect manipulation. So now all of these things become the just stockpiled one on top of one another. And then eventually what ends up happening is that you're left with a silent, dormant man with the equipment, never going through the equipping. Therefore, he never got an opportunity to step into the full calling. Not saying it's her fault, it's his fault for getting into it too early. Right? Let's own it. That's what we got to do. We got to own it. If I got into it too early, it's my fault. I'm the one to say, will you? She said, I will. So the person who initiated, we got to own that part. And my responsibility should have been to take the time to get the lesson, to get the understanding, to go through the equipping so that now when I say, will you, she say, I do. I know exactly who I'm called to be for her.
Man, you just said something, and something quickened inside of me when you said that. People, Evans and Dwyer, people always ask me, where I made my mistake in my marriage, and I'm still talking about 7 years later. So of course I'm affected by it, right? It happened. 20 years you did it, but they asked me what my one, and I wrote about this in the book, and that's one of the things I said. They said, "What would you do different if you how would you advise others? And I said, what I would do is I would tell them to make sure they manage the growth. Because see, growth is inevitable, right? You're gonna grow up, you grow apart, you grow in different directions. Growth is gonna happen whether you have, that's why they take roses and plant roses in a box, because they grow so wild, right? And if you don't manage the growth in your marriage, then you will end up growing apart, because you'll look up and you hadn't talked in 5 or 10 years. You'll look up and your anniversary is just mundane and redundant, right? And because you didn't manage that growth, then things started growing wild and growing apart. And I think that's what happens. And I'm equating that to what you just said a minute ago, Dwyer, because you said I stopped talking, and I'm not saying it's her fault, because at a certain point, if I'm man enough, I should have said, I'm going to talk in my own house. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to have to figure out how to communicate. And at 53 now, sometimes I think about dating now, and now I'm like, nah, but sometimes I think about it, but I think about the work, and I'd be doggone if I'm going to be with somebody that I don't want to talk to.
Yes.
I'd be doggone if I'm going to be with somebody that I feel like I got to hide something from. You know what I'm saying? If I can't be naked, if I can't be hot, go ahead, Dwight.
Can I do just a little micro adjustment there? I'm not saying managing the growth is not accurate, okay, because being a man, I don't think we talk about it a lot. Being a man is a large undertaking. And in this world, the world waters manhood now. And I've been saying this, man, I don't know, for at least 5 years. I think there is a very indirect attack on the father, and it's going through fathers. We pay attention to it, right? When I create the environment for growth, it ain't about managing it yet. I have to create the environment.
No doubt.
Right? Because those same roses that you talked about, if they ain't in the proper environment, they will not grow the way that they're supposed to grow. So now I don't want us to grow by evolution. I want us to grow by intentionality. Right. I want us to grow according to his word. And if that becomes the primary focus of our relationship, what his word says, now, ideally, the word moves us into the position to where we are inevitably, we don't have a choice but to grow, we collectively. Now, the idea is that we grow together, because if we don't grow together, now we're going to end up growing apart. So that comes back to me, right? Because there's a huge responsibility in that, right? And there's a direct comparison in the Bible that talks about, husbands as in Christ. So if we don't necessarily get that, and again, talking about me, I can't talk about nobody else. At the young age of 21, I didn't get that. I didn't know that. Why? Because it wasn't talked about in the household. I got the law in the household. I got the 10 commandments, but that's where it began and that's where it ends. Then after that, what did I get? Church, right? So I got the 10 commandments and I got church. And what did we get in the church? I'm raised Presbyterian. So we went to church and we was out by the time the ball game came home. So I knew I'd be home by the time. Look, man, I'm just being honest. Y'all don't. I knew we'd be home by the time kickoff happened, right? But again, there was no equipping in the church. See, to me, I think that's a golden opportunity, because my father was absent, but we're the deacons, we're the elders, you know what I'm saying? That was a great opportunity to take a young man under your wings and talk to him, develop him, and mentor him into manhood.
Where were you raised? What city were you raised in?
South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small town?
Yeah, Sumter, right outside of Columbia.
Okay. Go ahead. Follow up on that, Evans.
Look, I almost raised my hand. The idea of young couples not having mentors or other support is a travesty for our community, because I don't think, when you talk about a perfect age for marriage, then what is that? I got married at 21 also. And if I would have waited until I was 31, there still would have been some missing elements. If I would have got married at 41, there still would have been some missing elements. The key is teaching couples that when there is not, you don't have to say we're going to part ways for everything. Just having that put on the table that certain things you have to work through and be willing to work through, especially if you're both willing to make the necessary changes. Now, if one person is not willing, then that kind of kills the ability to couple. But if both are determined, my youngest child is now 22 and doesn't look like marriage is going to be in sight. My oldest is 29. Then I have a 24-year-old. Um, I tell them to grow and develop you, and then everything else will fall in line. Continue to have a relationship with the Lord, and also it enhanced my preaching and pastoring because these things are now discussed from the pulpit in a very open, straightforward way.
Okay.
Uh, and my motivation is, I don't know how much time I have, so I can't play around with it.
Gotcha.
So I have to
Yeah.
equip when I can, as much as I can. That when I come to the house, then I can say I have done the Lord's will, and it's not for show, it's not for fashion. It's to enhance the lives of people as we apply the word of the Lord. Um, um, finding the greater you. If it's not done right, you can lose yourself. And I think a lot of times that happens when you hope to grow together and both improve. If you have to acquiesce, if you have to compromise really your core beliefs, then you can end up losing yourself. And I always think that's a dangerous thing. And there's some who never think my core values, I should never compromise those. There should not be any give when it comes to certain things. And I tell people deal with that lightly because when you compromise, that's all you, because that was the choice you made. So you can't blame it on the other person. Um, and that's a whole nother discussion there.
That's good. That's good. And we're going to make a turn here at the top of the hour. I'm going to open. Well, I just put the phone number up, and if you all have any questions for Pastor Evans or for myself or for Dr. Dwyer, you're welcome to call in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to ask Dwyer and Evans this particular question because Evans, when I was going through therapy, I was talking to you to make sure she was doing it right. Every time I go have a therapy session, I call him to make sure she was doing it right until I finally figured it out. But one thing, and you notice this was a breakthrough for me, was when she taught me how to recognize an emotion. Because for the longest, Dwight, every time we get on our conversation, she would say something like, "Well, tell me about your day." I ain't do nothing. What was your win today? I ain't have none. Just a regular day. And it was just, and it, I that was still me program not wanting to talk, but I didn't realize I was bottling up emotions. So one day she called me. We had our session, and I was excited to tell her after this. She said, "What did you do today? What was your win? Or what was your win this week?" I said, "You know what my win was?" She said, "What?" "I washed and folded the clothes and put them away in one sitting." She said, "Good job." Because what she was trying to get me to do was recognize an emotion. Every emotion, negative or positive, needs a body. And you can ignore that emotion all you want to. You can ignore it all you want to. Even if it's negative, it's going to take that body and it's going to do whatever it does. But if you can recognize it soon enough, now you can make a decision on what to do with that emotion. I think, Dr. Dwyer, that's a problem with a lot of us, that especially don't because they got this new buzzword, emotional intelligence, right? And if people don't have that emotional intelligence, that buzzword they got here, then they don't recognize emotion. Talk about that for a moment.
I'm leery, if you will, because do understand emotional intelligence. Taught emotional
I
intelligence for a
don't.
while.
I
You,
don't
you said you
understand it,
don't.
but okay. I'm trying
taught
to learn
emotional
about it.
taught emotional intelligence for a while. And then I think, and I'm gonna go back to something that was said previously. I think within the grand scheme of understanding some things, other things open up and it reveals other things. So that said, the more you learn, the more that you know, the more you realize that you don't know. Right. So as long as we keep and maintain that humble approach, then we don't get too high on ourselves about the one thing that we think that we're experts in. And so when I listen to a lot of people talk about emotional intelligence, they're really not talking about emotional intelligence. In some ways, in some fashions, they're talking about emotions, but it's not necessarily intelligence per se. It's not necessarily progressive in the way of it. It's just kind of like how you want me to talk about this particular thing. I'll give you a perfect example. You asked me how my day was at work. It is fine because at the end of the day, that's how I view a job. A job serves its purpose. It's not something I want to like lean into and talk a great deal about. So at the end of the day, do I have the ability to talk about the things that I want to talk about? Do I want to talk about those things? Right. So there has to become a level of awareness, right? When it comes down to emotional intelligence. First and foremost, part of it, if we're in relationship, it's not about what you want me to talk about, right? Why don't you ask me what I want to talk about and allow me to share that with you? And so we go from, and I say it this way, we like to talk emotional intelligence from the standpoint of emotionally ignorant and end up emotionally manipulating people. But what is emotional intelligence overall when it comes to us? Well, emotional intelligence is found under spiritual intelligence because now it's a way of me understanding what it is I'm feeling in real time, actually taking the time to qualify what it is that I'm feeling, which means that I may have to do some level of introspection so I can ask myself what it is I'm feeling and why it is that I'm feeling this particular way. And then what is the necessary change that I need to make as it regards to this, and then do the thing that the new change is telling me to do, all while being emotionally regulated, which means I don't get too high and I don't get too low. So now when it comes down to emotional intelligence, we being in the space of relationship, it's not about what I want you to do, right? It's not about what you want me to do. It's how we recognize that the other person should be esteemed higher than ourselves. Therefore, we talk to them in that regard, not trying to make the other person feel like I am more emotionally savvy than they are.
Yeah.
That's good. Follow up with that, Evans. Then we're gonna go to this last segment. Go ahead.
The key, as the brother has already said, would be to use the biblical principles that we know are true, and just being able to apply them would save so much energy and time if we did esteem others, if we did respect more, if we gave more. You can always, you always want to, some people, they always want to receive, but they never want to give. And I think when a person is a giver, at some point in time, you do want to receive. That growth be left up to that individual and not you. So your role has to be, what should I do? And it goes back to the biblical principle. I still have to do what is right, what is best. And when we keep that frame of mind, I think you find balance with each other if you have the same intention, if you have the foundation. Now, when the foundation is different, it causes it to be more difficult. But if you have two people who have the same foundation and they apply the same principles at the same time, that is incredible in and of itself. We find forgiveness there. We find long suffering there. We find patience there. And one thing I learned late is to treat my wife like I would treat a sister in Christ.
Wow.
Meaning to love you unconditionally, regardless. And it takes so much of you putting yourself out of the way. Oh, I deserve this. I deserve, and just do it, and then trust God in the process. But you have to have the same foundation. And if the foundation is not the same, you can't apply the same principles.
Yeah. This has been a rich, 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 rich conversation, and it's gonna get richer. Listen, let's take. I'm gonna take. Y'all give me a sec. I'm gonna take a quick break, and then I'm gonna bring LaRue. LaRue is my podcast assistant. It's my AI podcast assistant, y'all. She got a little message for us. I'm gonna let her give that, and then we're gonna come back. We're gonna discuss what she said. I'm gonna open up the phone lines if y'all have any questions, and we will go from there. So y'all give me like 2 minutes to take this break. I'm gonna take my guys out, and then we'll be right back. Okay, give me one out, 2 out.
Intellectual stew. Oh, we're cooking something true. Intellectual stew. Real raw and relevant for you. With James Kirkland guiding through the deep, the light, the old, the new. Intellectual stew. Yeah, we're stirring up the view.
This week, I noticed a conversation that keeps appearing across many spaces. The idea that strength often meant silence for Black men. From a young age, many boys heard messages like, man up, don't cry, or handle it yourself. Over time, those messages can become emotional training, teaching men to carry pain quietly instead of speaking about it. Cultural conversations today are beginning to question that tradition. More people asking whether real strength might actually include honesty, vulnerability, and community. So perhaps the real question is not only who taught us to suffer in silence, but also who is teaching us that we no longer have to.
All right, that's the key. We no longer have to abide by those rules. I appreciate all of you all who have been sticking with us through the duration of this conversation tonight, especially my friends over here on YouTube, Lisa Keys and His Divine Appointment. I think they keep calling Dwyer Coach, so I guess they are followers of Dr. Dwyer. And I appreciate you all for being here tonight. Now, the phone number is there, 404-860-2775. We put out some deep principles tonight. We've talked about why men are silent or why men might be silent. What we have not talked about yet a lot, Dr. Evans, and we're going to bring you back in to get this started and also get Brother Dwyer back in, is how, as we internalize the pressures, as we internalize stress, how they adversely affect the body. Because I'm going to tell you something. What I've been through in the last couple of weeks, and I've been through it, Doc, I wish I would have fallen or something. I wish I'd have gotten in a fight or been in a car accident or something to justify the pain that I've been going through, right? It would make more sense if I had gone through something like that. But all I did was cough. And couple that with, maybe the silent stress and things of that nature. How does that body, that amygdala and that cortisol being raised, how does that affect the body, Pastor Evans, and cause the body to turn against itself like that?
Well, again, to internalize and never truly process, it kind of it leaves you holding it internally instead of processing it and moving forward, moving on, growing. And it affects the body with high blood pressure, just whatever stress does to the body, drains you of energy, causes body aches, it disrupts sleep, interferes with appetite, all of those things. But not only does it affect the body, it affects your productivity, because again, having to be healthy and alert, that is affected. And it can just keep going and going if you never learn to process. And when we internalize all the time, my biggest problem was, if I could internalize things and understand, I would never discuss it. I would never process it, failing to realize that it was still in me and the weight was getting heavier and heavier. So if you're talking about processing, that's the aim, to process, to learn from something, to really understand how you feel about something, and to be free enough to verbalize that and be okay with whatever whatever that truth is. We don't always do that. We hold it on the inside. And one of the definition for depression was anger turned inwardly, and that's so I think Freud coined that. So it is such a dangerous thing to internalize and never flow through just processing and growing.
Wow. Follow up, Dr. Dwyer.
I think we have to understand, and this is me talking as a retired Army veteran after 24 years with multiple deployments, right? The amygdala is that little, it's a little small almond shaped thing that's in the back of your brain. And the issue with it is that it does not necessarily track geographic location. It doesn't track anything but your protection. So when something comes up, like you said earlier, it's the thing that is responsible for fight or flight within you. Now, it triggers this chemical called cortisol. And how does cortisol work? And I think if you look at it from the perspective of being in danger, it's the thing that gives you what we, at sometimes would call superhuman strength, where a person is able to move a car off of somebody or something of that nature. But we also find ourselves in other situations to where the danger isn't that bad, but it's more prolonged, and that is called more so of a slow cortisol drip. So it is a heightened sense of awareness over a prolonged period of time. Well, when you really understand what cortisol does, it literally shuts down your immune system and it diverts all of your energy to that fight or flight mentality. Now, there's a danger that goes along with that because when your immune system goes down, your immunoprotection is not available. So when you're in a situation when you have that slow cortisol drip, i.e., I go to work, I got to deal with work all day, and I'm coming home, and me and my wife can't seem to be on the same sheet of music, and all she is doing is fussing, and we're going back and forth and bickering and things of that nature. So I may experience the slow cortisol drip at work, but I also may experience a slow cortisol drip at work, and then next thing, I mean, not at work, but at home, and then next thing you know, I start getting sick, and I'm starting to acquire sicknesses for a prolonged period of time because at the end of the day, I'm not recognizing where it's coming from. I think it's just people that I'm encountering and things of that nature, and don't realize it's because I'm constantly in an environment to where I am not at ease. And when I'm not at ease, if we really stop and think about it, it is me being diseased. And if I am diseased, now over a period of time, I am going to attract some sort of disease simply because at the end of the day, disease is a result of a lower immune system because I am constantly in a fight or flight mentality.
That's exactly what happens when that cortisol level gets raised. It gets stuck, and it can, like I said earlier, it can't tell the difference between a tiger in the jungle or if I'm dealing with a nightmare from a child or when I was abused as a child. But every time I hear a woman raise her voice, does it remind me of my mama or the person who raised me earlier in life? And I remember a time, and I don't know if you can appreciate this or not, Dwyer. I was at Walmart out in Conyers. This little young girl, she might have been 22, 23. She had a little baby. I've told this story before, but she was just jerking her little baby all around. Sit down, don't do that. Just going off on him. I said, stop doing that little boy like that. And I knew I was stepping in the hornet's nest, but I'm pretty good at it. I can handle myself. She said, "This my baby. You don't tell me what to do with my baby. This is my baby." I said, "No, I ain't." I said, "No, I don't tell you what to do." I said, "I don't know. I can't tell you what to do with the baby, but I sure have been the boy." And when you raise him I said, when you raise him I said, he can't take it out on you, but he'll take it out on everybody that looks like you in the future. I said, stop doing that little boy like that. And she got quiet. You know what I'm saying? Because now he can't fight back. But when he gets older, he's going to fight somebody that look like you because he couldn't fight you back. So you have to be very careful and intentional about what you raise. What if Dwyer, if the person who planted the bamboo tree didn't come back the second, third, or the fourth year, they would have missed the blessing, right? Because the blessing didn't come until year 5, and don't even know when year 5. It was somewhere between year 5 and year 6. And sometimes because we don't see the evidence of what we think growth should look like, then we abort the mission or we start to do something else, and it ends up thwarting it ends up underdeveloped, making the growth undeveloped. I'm using the underdeveloped. So we got to be very, 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 very cautious in that. Listen, I've enjoyed this show so far, and I've had looking at the comments. But listen, I have put the link in the chat. If you all want to come on, I have no problem with that. If you have some questions, I got a whole bunch more questions I can ask, and I'm sure they'll answer them. But I'm going by 17 more minutes. We're gonna give the benediction. So if you have, unless we're in a deep conversation, but if you want to come on the show, ask any questions, call in, click the link, whatever, I'll let you come in. Now, if you come on, just be respectful. That's all I ask. I don't think we've said anything disrespectful, so I don't think we'll have an issue in that regard. But if you have any questions for Pastor Evans, or if you have a question for Dr. Dwyer, give us a call, or like I said, click the link, and the link will enable you to come on video. I don't have a problem with that tonight. Now, so while we're waiting to see if anybody is going to ask any questions, I do want to ask this question, and I'm going to ask it of you, Pastor Evans. How can faith communities model emotional honesty without losing spiritual strength?
Model.
What's up, Dawood? How do they model emotional honesty without losing spiritual strength? We could be emotionally honest, without looking weak, as they say. But so how are we going to do this and still display spiritual strength?
When it comes to any local congregation, I think it starts with the leadership able to model. I try my best to be very transparent, vulnerable every time I preach, because I want to give some credence to the reality of what is being said. And I think if we don't have a safe place, then church will be just another place where people gather, and there's not a realness that's there. So I don't think that you can get all that you can when what is being modeled before you does not continue to hold on to something that reminds everyone of reality. And to bring faith in that reality is what every biblical character has ever done. And that is where we see the blessings of God. That is where we see God moving when we look at our very real situation, and we look at it from the perspective of when God intervenes, how he can come in and do only what God does. So I think it starts with the leadership. I think it starts with an atmosphere that allows for people to be honest. And I always tell people, if you can't express yourself, if you can't cry, if you can't just sometimes sit in silence or sacredness in church, then what has church become?
That's good. That's good. That's good. Hey, that question is for the audience right there. What emotions, and this is for men and women, what emotions were you taught to hide growing up? What emotions were you taught to hide growing up? Dr. Dwyer, this next question is for you. How do we create spaces where men, and I'm not just talking about in relationships, I'm just talking about in society and community. How do we create spaces where men actually feel safe enough to speak? And I really want to hear your perspective based on what you've told us as far as your orientation.
Yep. So it's almost as though your question takes me to the end of what was just said, because I'm agreeing. And if I may, I'm gonna kind of lean off of what he just said. I think we live in a society to where I have to do some type of some condition setting before I can be honest and transparent about what I'm getting ready to say. And it may sound something along the lines of, I don't mean no harm, but, right? Or don't take this the wrong way. And when we have to do that, what ends up happening is that we are almost like watering down what is getting ready to be said. And so from the previous response, I think the thing that must happen is that we have to recognize that the word does not necessarily need my caveats. If I get to the point where I feel like I got to make you feel better about what he said, now I am actually putting myself in a compromising situation. So going back to what was actually said and talked about, there are three things that I really do believe that every person needs to understand. And we would do well to understand this in our community because there's this thing called a commune. And we don't talk about a commune a lot because in essence, well, we most of us probably just don't know, right? But what is a commune? A commune is literally a group of people who live together to share responsibility and to share resources. And through the commune, there's this thing called communion. And communion, as we know, is often as you do this in remembrance of me. So now that communion gives the commune a focus. And so from that point on, that becomes a community. So within the scope of community, now you have households that look like the Bible talks about. You have husbands, wives, and children in that household. And why is that important? Because husbands and wives are honoring their responsibility according to what the Bible says, and they're training their children up in the ways that they should go. So as they get older, they do not depart. Well, now, once we have a number of those healthy households that are actually doing these things, the men in that community literally becomes mentors of the younger boys in that community. Sure, there may be one or two households to where, the father may have, an accident, may have passed away, prematurely, whatever that looks like. But yes, that's kind of like what that looks like now. So now you're seeing it as a young boy, what it looks like for a husband to be there for his family and to love his wife like Christ loved the church, right? You see what that man does in the community as helping out, especially when there's a family and there is no man in that house. He is actually respecting him, kind of like my brother said previously. He is respecting that woman as a sister in Christ, and he is making sure there is no lack. And so, because of this community is thriving that way, now that community becomes the pillar of the church. So now the church itself, it has no lack because the community has no lack because the community is rooted in the foundation, which is the family, husband, wife, and child. So now family begats community, community begats the church, and now the church leaders, what they can actually do, they can be a functional part of the city, and they can actually go sit on city council meetings and be the voice of the community.
Well, let the church say amen. That's all I got to go. You just basically gave us a very, very, very simple, implicit economics lesson. And I appreciate it because when people start talking about solutions for society and all of those things, right? And this is one thing about it. Everybody can point out problems. I bet you, I haven't seen it yet, but everybody, and I'm glad so far in this conversation, we haven't really had anybody point out any problems. This has really been a very solution-based oh, somebody just did put a problem. Somebody put, okay. Damn, Dawood, you just all right. Jesus. This has been a very solution-based conversation. It really has. And we haven't, because I think anybody can point out a problem. You know what I'm saying? I can walk down the street and I can point out every problem. I can say that the red light don't be red long enough. I can point and say that the curve is too high. Everybody can point out a problem. But when people collaborate and come up with solutions, and what you just did, Dr. Dwyer, is you gave a solution. And that's what it's supposed to be like. And the thing is, if you want to get a measurement of a circle, how do you start? In a solution, in the center, right? You start anywhere other than the center, it's off. We've started everywhere else trying to find solutions instead of starting in the center of our community. In the heart of our community, and that's where we are, and we're messed up. Let me read. Dawood said this is a solution. He said the problem is we are apologizing for speaking the truth. Okay, you're right. All I saw was problem. You're right, but we don't have to apologize for speaking the truth. We don't. Dwyer, Lisa Keys asked you a question. We're almost out of here, but she said for Dr. Dwyer, and we're gonna get Evans to answer this question as well. But how often do we seek divine wisdom versus relying solely on emotions or logic in conflicts and major decisions? Because, and you got a point with that question, Lisa, because if you're not emotionally stable, your decisions are affected. Go ahead, answer her question, please, sir.
I would add to what you said. If we're not emotionally stable, our emotions become the decision. So So when we really look at this, there's two ways I'm gonna answer this. How often do we in this society? I don't think too often, right? Sure, I believe that. Sure, you have men who may do so more often than the normal. But when you really pay attention to what's happening in this society, in this world, in this culture, in these particular positions of prominence, which I don't have to be specific, I think y'all can figure out what I'm actually saying. I don't think there's a lot of spiritual seeking or guidance seeking from the Father when it comes down to these decisions that's actually made. You do something at me, then the response you're going to get. Now, how often should we? I think we should seek spiritual guidance daily. I don't think we have to wait on a decision to be made to seek spiritual guidance. In fact, I talk about it from the perspective of you need to be stored up internally for the circumstance that you're going to be faced with at a later point in time. So if I'm not constantly seeking guidance on a daily basis, seeking his face, trying to get his understanding of what it is that he wants me to do with this calling that he has bestowed upon me, then if I don't do that, then I'm doing it in my own will. I'm doing it based upon my own understanding, which goes against several biblical principles. So, with that being said, I have to seek guidance from the Father on a daily basis. I have to, in fact, sometimes mostly multiple times a day, because there are multiple decisions that need to be made. And there are different seasons that exist within the realm of this calling that I'm doing. There are some days I am going to constantly seek guidance from him because there's a difference between walking by faith and then walking ignorantly by faith and claiming and walking ignorantly and claiming that it's faith, right? So we have to look at what season we're in as well and understand, like, look, I may need a download from the Father almost every hour. And then there's points in time they may only need it for a day. And then there are points in time. So you know what? We'll do it in route, Father. We're just you look at me, you might think I'm crazy because I'm walking and talking, and you think I'm talking to myself. But I'm actually, I'm prayer. I'm praying right now. You think I have to do it according to a particular standard, a particular rule, a particular way. It has to be done this way in your closet with your oil and your no. I am walking and talking with the Father in real time because you know what? That's when I need that download so I can practice.
That's good. That's good. Follow up on that right quick. Same question for you, Dr. Evans. How
I
do we
would
create spaces? Okay, go ahead. You already know the answer. You know the
I
question.
would say this: be very careful when we make decisions based upon emotions, when we make decisions based upon
Talk
logic.
about the question.
A good place to start for the person of faith is what pleases God. And
Mm,
I think that has to be an ultimate questions. And of course that's in line with your training. That's in line with what is example before you. And I also add just spiritual conversations. One of the things about counseling is that some people never come in for counseling because their support system is so stable.
mm,
You know,
mm.
that you have these individuals that you can go to. I'm not talking about for something that you need medication, some type of intervention for. I'm talking about when a person is just stuck in a place, and you have these people who can engage in spiritual conversation, just like we're talking tonight. Just a conversation that is saturated with something greater than emotion or logic, but it has that spiritual component, and that is as easy as just talking to people, you know. And you don't have to talk about what verse or chapter, but a principle that they may not be even aware of is a spiritual principle.
Mm.
And the suggestion of even considering that can open up avenues for a person that they have not considered before. But I think the premise has to be, for the person of faith, what pleases God.
Yeah, that's good. Now, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I'm not. I ain't got nothing to do with the devil. You know that. But if it's a person who doesn't believe in God, but they live a very moral lifestyle, because I know we've been lured. We have all kind of suggestions out here. They live moral lifestyle. They don't cuss. They don't drink. They take care of their family. All that's well. What do you say to them?
When I would still go with a a principle that can be easily explained. One of the things that we failed to do was taking the Bible and pulling from it principles to live by.
Yeah.
There are people who are not Christians who believe in giving a tenth away, and they have seen the blessings of God because of the principle. So I would still stick with these principles, principles that you can live by, principles that you can test, principles that have been proven through time. If a person is not a Christian or not a religious person, we have to live by some rules, uh, and I would still suggest those even for a non-Christian, which you
Okay.
consider.
That's what I wanted to hear you say. I ain't trying to let you dominate the time, Rayfield, but they got another question for you. And when they ask that question for you, I'm going to ask the question for the audience. And I want y'all to participate in this, really, because this is a safe space. It really is. We're practicing for how we're going to be. You know, I love Sunday morning, but we only get 2 hours in on Sunday morning, or an hour and 45 minutes, those of us who go to church. But then we got to live all the rest of the week. So I try to give practical lessons that we can learn to acquiesce and acclimate to our lifestyle. And prayerfully, it'll help change us for the better. But here's a question. Because I thought about this, and if you really put a little depth on this question, it might make sense. When was the first time you felt safe expressing how you really felt? I want that to be a serious question. When was the first time? And you hold on. I see you rubbing your hands, Dwyer. I'm gonna get Crystal's question into Evans first. But then we're gonna come back. But I want y'all to answer that one in the chat. Give me a little question on that. Some of y'all don't want to call. Y'all want me to read your questions. If I see it, I'll read it. But here's Crystal's question for Rayfield. Crystal said to Ray. Oh, it came off. She said, at Rayfield, you stated you stayed quiet in your marriage to keep the peace. Can you advise what a wife could do to make her husband feel comfortable? That's a good question. Communicating more so that can change. Hold on. Can I let her preach for a minute? I'm gonna let her preach. I gotta let her preach right quick. Hold on. I might hoop for you on that one because hold on. She asked the question. Yeah, to make a husband feel comfortable, so he'll talk in the home. Okay, I'm sorry. Doc, answer that question for me. I want to know the answer myself. I'm sorry. I had to hoop for you on that one, Crystal. That was mine. That wasn't even for you. Go ahead. But what can she do? For real talk. Real talk.
To be totally honest, I think the wife can listen, can always express unconditional love, and sometimes to sit in silence and just receive. And then maintain that connection, even when she may not emotionally understand what is going on. One of the things that would happen to me is there would be a disconnect. And that disconnect left me in a place where I would say to myself, I just should have kept my mouth closed. And for men, I think it's having the confidence in knowing that I can speak truth, even if it appears to create a negative environment. And I don't have to be afraid of that, because if I continue to give in to that, then things will never improve. So sometimes I do have to go through very tense situations, tense discussions, but getting to the other side of that is a place of increased peace and joy. So there's a risk that the man must take, and there's a risk that the woman must take in giving. The man must take in being open. The woman must take in being accepting. And I think those two things are very helpful.
Now that's it. That's his answer. Okay, that's not saying that that's anybody else's answer. That's not saying that's a one size fits all answer. That's his answer. What are you gonna say?
I said, please don't think that's just the
Yeah, that's a one size fits all. And I want y'all. Let me say this before I ask Dr. Dwyer this last question. Listen, James, David, nor Ray are here to give you the right or wrong answer. We're gonna tell you our truth, and out of that, we might not give you the right or wrong answer, but I pray that we give you a relevant answer, because all of us have answers that fit our situation, right? I don't know what size shoe you wear, Dwyer, but I know I wear a 12. And if we wear different size shoes, then we can't wear the same size shoes. So we don't have the same experience. I was raised in a household with my dad and my stepmom, but my stepmom had me from the time of 7 years old. I called her mama. I still call her mama. She taught me the difference between a dinner fork and a salad fork. Some of y'all still don't know that. She taught me a whole bunch of different things that I didn't know then. I taught me what elbow grease is. A lot of kids don't know what elbow grease is. Y'all know what elbow grease is. But all those types of things she taught me. So that was my mama growing up, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. But everybody has different situations. So when you hear these answers, find what fits. As old folk, you say, chew the meat, spit out the bones, and go. Now, you made a good I'm a facial expression reader. And when I asked this question, I saw Dwyer's face, and I want to hear this answer. When was the first time you felt safe expressing how you really felt?
Can I give the reason for the face first?
Man, you talk. I ain't got nowhere to go. I'm trying to let y'all off.
No, I just want.
I can talk to 10. I'm trying to let y'all off.
It's your show. I don't want to. The reason why I made the face is because I think there are phrases that the world have given us to use, and we believe that with those phrases now it gives me a requirement. Case in point, safe space. If I'm being honest with you, when it comes down to answering this question, if you don't mind, bring it back up because I want people to see it as I give the answer, right? If I'm honest with you, when it came down to answering this question, when was the first time I felt safe expressing how I really felt? The day that I realized that I did not need to feel safe to express how I really feel.
Good. Well, you're gonna make me break a window. I'm about to throw something across.
I don't need to create a safe space for two grown men to express themselves. You just need to be two grown men and express yourself. That's all. And
let me push back a little bit. I've been letting y'all ride. I ain't pushed back at all tonight. But what about when I'm 6'5"? 6 foot 9. That's a wish. I'm 5'9", soaking wet. But anyway, what if I'll fake it 6 foot. What if I was 6 feet? Mama was 5'7". But for all my life, she made me feel 5'3". So I've never really felt like the man that you're talking about. I didn't even have an example of a man because 30 years ago, they started this whole mass incarceration thing. And they took fathers, they took husbands, they took uncles, they took grandfathers. So there were men that were never raised in homes again. Uncles even there to punch me in my chest to get me stronger. So what do I say to the individual who doesn't have that model to say, because it's easy to say man up, but like you just said a minute ago, I got the equipment, but I'm not equipped.
Well,
how do I, in that instance, I want to push back because I like these kind of conversations. So how do I create that safe space? Or when do I feel comfortable? Especially, come here, James. Let's go, James Kirkland. Let's go back to 6612 all-wheel drive. When I had to go to my bedroom every day after school, watch kids play on my basketball goal. I couldn't go outside and play, but the only time I came out was to get dinner and go back inside. And I don't dislike my mama for that because she thought she was doing the right thing. But I wrote those rules. So when I got off the couch, I was stuck on the couch. And after that, things didn't go right. I said, okay, I ain't going back to the couch because I know I wrote a book on that. But then I walked and got in the bed and stayed stuck in the bedroom. When did I feel safe? Where does the safety come from? Because I know I'm a man. I had to raise kids.
Can I say this?
I want to hear him. Now go ahead. I'm sorry. I want to hear his comeback. But go ahead. I'm joking. Go ahead. That's my friend. I like him.
This will be short. One of the things that we often do is resort back to our childhood. And it takes the growth and the strength to stand in your manhood. Now I want to hear what Doc has to say too.
I love this question, right? I love the fact that you push back.
I'm gonna put it back up. Let me put it back up because I'm waiting on. Ain't nobody in the chat answered it. Yes, I guess they don't feel safe. That's fine with me. But go ahead.
It's two ways. It's two ways that I will answer this. Number one,
okay.
If I'm talking to a person who is a believer, then I need to help them. Well, not need to help them, but I want to ask them something for them to think deep into. What do you believe and how much of that do you really believe? Because if you need me to make you feel safe, the caveat of that is that, well, there's a challenge. There's an internal conflict that's existing in you right now.
But
I
don't answer for nobody else. Answer it for you.
No,
Okay, good. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Okay,
right.
good. Gotcha.
There's an internal conflict that's happening within you. Either
Okay.
I believe what he said, or I believe that I don't feel safe. But I can't do both at the same time.
Mm,
So going back to what I just said, the day that I realized that this conflict is internal within me saying I need a safe space is me projecting how I am currently feeling on you and making you responsible for making it safe for me. That's not your job. That's not your responsibility. Once I
let's assume that's never said though.
well,
Let's
but
assume that it's never said that. But let's take the psychology and the philosophical.
hold on,
Let's
hold
just.
on, hold on.
I'm,
Hold on,
okay,
Doc.
I'm
You
sorry.
just say you
Ugh.
did. First of all, you did two
I,
things just now. You
I
gave me
know.
the
I'm sorry. I missed
question,
it.
right? You gave me the question, then you moved
I
the
won't let him
goalpost.
answer it. I won't let him Go ahead, bro. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Listen,
we fighting.
listen, and I
We
just
gonna
got
fight
finished
tonight.
teaching. Listen, I just got finished teaching on effective communication the other day, right? So, so that's the thing. Once I recognize that within my head, then I realized that there's an internal conflict. Once I
Yeah.
recognized that internal conflict, then I said, I need to own my version of this relationship with the Most High that I'm claiming that I got.
Gotcha.
And that
Gotcha.
being said, I can't project it on you and make you responsible for creating a safe space for me. That's not your job. So
So
now, so now when it comes down to, being in the midst of brothers, right? You can't make it safe for me. I have to be able to look at you and see that you guys have security within you. And I'm looking at how you display and model it and so forth and so on. I'm like, man, you know what? These brothers are actually honest about how they feel. They're telling us as brothers how they're going through these things and so forth and so on. And I'll be honest with you, that happened when I was in Texas years ago, and we had we had Saturday morning get-togethers, and this was called Men Press. And no joke, we were talking about men stuff. Some of the things that the brothers were dealing with at home with their current wife and so forth and so on. And we were just laying it all on the line. And I'm like, man, this is interesting. Like they are just being just honest about the whole thing. And this me in the corner, married like everybody else, but I ain't, I'm not,
You feel
I'm
me?
not there yet. I'm not there yet. And this is why I talk about the environment of
I
growth,
got you.
right? Instead of managing it. But once I sensed in the environment that, you know what, this is the thing I never got when I was growing up, seeing men be honest about what they're dealing with. And then no judgment coming from the pastor, the elders, the other brothers, and that no judgment, just saying how they dealt with it. Not saying that the way I deal with it, you got to deal with it, the same way. No,
The fact is they dealt with it.
they dealt with it.
That's the
Right.
fact. That's
And
the
that
main
was,
thing.
and that was the key. Now let's change gears because again, everybody don't believe like I believe. But I still think the principle, like brother was just saying, I still think the principle is still the same. I don't have to create a safe space for you, right? I want you to recognize who you are to your wife, who you are to your kids, who you are in this world, and recognize if we're completely honest, when you show up, you bring security. You just don't feel like it right now. So now,
Yeah.
because of your presence, people around you are supposed to feel safe.
Absolutely. I get that. And I think I was looking more for, like Chauncey said, I probably didn't truly feel safe till a couple of years ago when I started therapy with my first therapist. Well, Chauncey's in his probably mid-40s. So that means he's gone all his life being raised with a single mother and not feeling safe to express himself. And I'm not saying that the way I express myself, even when we talk about the management growth, I think you're talking about step one. I think managing growth is part of controlling the environment. That's all part of managing. You understand what I'm saying? So I think we're saying the same thing. We just you on one side of the equal sign and I'm on the other side. You know, I mean, and I see coach's perspective as well. Rebirth, I do. I think it's all part of a complete picture. But the question, the way I was trying, coach will go around the corner to make a point and then come all the way back, and he does a great job at that. But sometimes I cut Crater straight across the field. Don't cuss me out, coach. You're gonna get me back next week. I promise.
Hey, like you just said, everybody ain't in the same place.
Yeah, everybody the same lane. Because I'm saying, when was the first time first time you felt safe expressing,
Right.
not trying to make anybody else feel comfortable, not trying to make it, not trying to bring the peace, I'm saying, when did me, James Kirkland, probably didn't feel safe a long time growing up. Because, if you get told shut up enough, you'll stop talking, right? And I'm not saying I got told shut up a lot, because I didn't. That would not be the truth. But I appreciate the answer regardless. I appreciate it. I'm gonna
But
go back
just
and
for
listen.
just for the record, I did say in Texas, right in the midst of that was me I was talking about.
Oh, I got it.
All
No, you got no. Listen, everybody, please don't take this the wrong way, y'all. This is just me and him talking. This, and we'll talk like this offline as well too. But he did say in Texas, and the point was, when you said you heard those brothers expressing, and you weren't in that place yet, but you did hear that it's possible. And there are certain things at this point now, at 53 years old, I'm not expressing myself around certain people. If I don't know you, or if I'm not I'm probably not I'm not that healed. I'm not that emotionally available to just share my emotions with just random anybody and everybody. Now, I've cried more in the last week with this sciatica than I've cried probably in the last 5 years. You know what I'm saying? Well, no, I can't tell you. My mother passed in the last 5 years. I cried real hard about her the other day. Dr. Evans, I had a flashback, man, about mama. And the flashback that came to me, Dwyer, was, I preached her eulogy. And when I preached her eulogy, one of the rules I gave myself is that I couldn't cry. And when I didn't cry, I don't think I ever really grieved. And so when I sat here last week on the floor trying to get my back together, and I was watching a video on Facebook, and it was her cheering for my nephew. When I heard her voice, man, I lost it. You know what I'm saying? But it was like a cleansing for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I kind of went back, and I was able to go back and deal with those emotions, right? And so I'm getting there. I'm better than I'm not all that I should be, but I'm sure not what I used to be. And hanging out with cats like Dr. Dwyer, because he's gonna come with the thunder every time, and I appreciate it, Doc. You challenge my perspective. I don't have to clean up nothing you say. I mean, I could just sit back and just hoop and let the music play and let you change your voice all day. And Evans is gonna be always clear and concise, and y'all bring friends with y'all. I appreciate y'all. If y'all not gonna call in, I'm not gonna keep these gentlemen on the call any longer unless someone else has a question. But these are some of the final. In fact, before I give my final takeaway, I'm gonna give a couple of final takeaways. A couple of takeaways we've learned tonight is: number one, silence is not strength. Number two, vulnerability is not weakness; it's wisdom. Number three, the mind and the body are deeply connected. They're deeply connected. Number four, stress stays hidden. Stress that stays hidden can show up physically. That's what he just said. High blood pressure, all those types of things. And this is the one I want y'all to really understand. Healing begins when we stop carrying everything alone. The moment we stop carrying everything alone, Chauncey, you call. Oh, okay. It's Chauncey. Are you trying to call? Hold on. Let me see if he's trying to. Are you trying to? Okay. He's call again, Chauncey, because I didn't hear you calling. I'm calling you on I answer my regular phone. Call right back, Chauncey. Somebody's trying to answer a call, and it didn't ring on my end. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me turn the volume. Oh, here it is. There it is. There we go. All right, y'all. We have it. Are you there, Chauncey? How you hung up? Call right back, Chauncey. I thought I had you. Call right back, sir. Let me get his phone call. Call right back, Chauncey. Please. Go ahead. Let me see. Where was I at? Oh, here it is. He's calling now, y'all. All right, hold on, Chauncey. Let me get you in the screen. Hold on. Share screen. Wow. All right, Chauncey. I think we got you. Hold on. Let me get you. I don't want him up there. I just want three. Chauncey,
Yes, sir.
can you hear me? Can y'all hear Chauncey?
Yes.
All right, go ahead, Chauncey.
I just want to, I had a quick question I was going to ask about. Was talking about, what's the question that was I want to ask? Yeah, making decisions. I wanted to ask a follow up about how does divorce or what was someone's thoughts about divorce playing a part in making those types of decisions? Especially, like I know for me, for example, I kind of grew up in the church, and I remember you hear like a lot of different churches say, you know, marriage is supposed to be like a lifetime covenant, things of that nature. So I just wanted to get thoughts about divorces and things of that nature and how your thoughts about that.
And
Anyone can answer that question.
did y'all hear his question? I ain't really get a full understanding of your question either, Chauncey. So you're asking, I see earlier you said in regards to making decisions, how does divorce play a part in that? I see that you put that in. Is that what you're asking about? And,
All right.
and what type of decision?
And like when you get to the part when you say, okay, this is, you know, what we're going to do, we're going to actually divorce as opposed to staying married. Because I feel like, well, I guess from my perspective, growing up in church, people always say, forgive, so stay married for a long time. The marriage is a covenant, all that good stuff. You hear that throughout church. I feel like I've heard that throughout most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So when you make that decision to actually divorce and you make that decision, I guess my question is, you know, I feel like when you learn in church that you like you're not supposed to divorce, when you make that type of decision, how does that play a part of that?
I'm gonna toss that one right on over to Pastor Evans because I know you run into those situations as a pastor. So you go ahead and you answer that question for this brother, if you will.
Yes, for I guess for anyone who's raised within the church, you hear things like hates divorce, and that makes one feels like if there is a divorce, there's a great failure, and I still believe that the divorce has been one of my greatest failures, but it does not mean that I cannot live past it, that God will still not bless me after that point. Um, so, so I, your individual relationship with God is more important than your. And I think sometimes I lost sight of that by thinking God was somehow blessing me through my marriage. And that if that changed, then he wouldn't be able to bless me. So my mind was just inundated with what I've grown up hearing all of my life. And then when I went through it and God brought me through it, and God continued to have a relationship with me, and he continued to bless me, that showed me that divorce was not the unpardonable sin.
Mm.
So I could ask God for forgiveness for my part, whatever I did, uh, uh, and then live again. It is not something that anyone wants, especially when you have a family, an established family. But I think that when you think about the alternative, staying together and being very destructive in each other's life and also the influence of the children's lives, that gives a level of clarity to it. But now divorce is not the unpardonable sin. That's what I had to come to terms with. As painful as it was, as devastating, as much as I didn't want it, it happened, and that gave me motivation to probably live for myself, meaning do do what I needed to do, and that was not resist during the divorce, and that is my.
Did you have anything to follow up on that with Dwight?
Yeah, I'm 100% in alignment. I think sometimes we try to govern ourselves to a word that we never used as governance before we got into the situation.
Mm.
So if our relationship, our marriage wasn't governed by the lines of scripture, and we never made the proper course correction throughout the course of our marriage so that we can align with his will according to what the word actually says, then I should not have any reservations by saying, especially if we are at the point to where it is extremely toxic, it is to the point to where we are just like cohabitating all of those things, then at the end of the day, hey, it's better to separate so that you guys can have some type of mental clarity and peace, as opposed to trying to stay together and force it to work. That's not healthy for anybody. So again, if it wasn't governed by his word, we didn't course correct to get in alignment with his word, then at the end of the day, we might be in a transactional relationship as opposed to a covenantal relationship. And if it's more transactional than it is covenantal, then it's not governed by the covenant. If I'm not exercising in this relationship, and I talk about me first, if I'm not exercising husbands love your wives like Christ loved the church, and she is not exercising, wives submit yourself to your own husband. If we're not exercising that and not trying to become one flesh, and you're doing your thing and I'm doing my thing, we're not holding ourselves accountable to the scriptures anyway.
Yeah, that's good stuff. That's real good stuff. That's good stuff, y'all. This has been a rich conversation. I want to do it again next week. I know y'all don't want to mess with me again next week, but this is good. I think we can help some people because we're able to state how we feel clearly. We can even push back and not get mad at each other. You know what I'm saying? This is grown. This is good. This is good conversation. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Evans. 2 minutes. Give us your closing thoughts. 2 minutes that we're gonna get. I'm gonna try to get us out of here by 10 o'clock.
One of the ways that we face our fear is that we deal with, we confront them. And since I'm in the counseling field and also the pastoral field, one of the ways that will help people confront their fears is through counseling. And if you engage that process, you can hear yourself talk about the solutions that you already know will work for you, that you may not have the courage to step out in faith and fulfill. So that is the reason I see a value in counseling. And of course, how can I not see a value in the God who created me and helping me get to that place where he purposed and destined me to be?
Yes.
If when I find that life is most fulfilled, and let me say this for the record, it doesn't mean that life is perfect, but there's something about having a fulfilled life that makes up for the things that are not there, because you're so fulfilled with finding your destiny. So those things go hand in hand. I have not known a brother or sister who didn't need to talk with someone and to be open with someone. I would always say, seek that person out. It may not be every member of a ministry, but now God has prepared someone to help walk with you, and that is a blessing in itself, and we don't take advantage of that as often as we should.
That's good, Doc. We appreciate you, y'all. Thank God for Reverend Ray Evans, Pastor Ray Evans, being with us tonight. He'll be back soon. He's never turned me down. If he wasn't available now, then he might not have been available, but he ain't never turned me down. So we'll get him back soon. Because honestly, I'm Evans and Dwyer. I'm going to turn this Monday night show into more of a social justice, mental health space type show. If I'm preaching, I preach on Wednesday night or Sunday night or something else. But this show is going to be about uplifting our community, males and females, things that we can do to uplift this community. All right, Dwyer, give me 2.5-3 minutes, and then we're going to close it on out of here.
Yeah, this is an important conversation. It's actually a conversation that we're having on Friday night as well. I think when it comes down to just having a better understanding of who you are as a person, I think we got to go back to the basics. If we don't go back to the basics and recognize that there's a 4-part to your development, then we're missing a big piece. And I love the fact that Brother Ray talked about the counseling space, because I like to talk about the coaching space, and they actually work hand in hand, believe it or not. And so in the space of what I tend to talk about, you have to have a healthy self-concept before you can have this healthy self-identity. And then if I don't have a healthy self-concept, I don't have a healthy self-identity, then I won't have a healthy posture and therefore I am going to esteem myself in the wrong way. This is how you get young men abusing themselves and abusing their bodies because they do not understand who they are and whose they are. When you understand whose you are and you understand who he created you to be, and then you pay close attention, staying closely connected with him, and he shows you what he called you to do, now you can actually go through the developmental stages that you need to go through so that you can walk in that thing that you are called to do. Now, I say this all the time, and I really do believe you don't have to hunt for her. She will show up. She will show up because she is going that same direction, and then she can help you. And this is my phrase. She can help you carry that bucket of water. But let me tell you something. If she show up and she don't even offer no help, she ain't her. She might be a good friend. She might be a good sister, but she ain't her. And I think sometimes we confuse proximity and availability with destiny, and it's not the same thing. Some of us has tied ourselves to people that we were never supposed to, and then we struggle and fight trying to keep this boat afloat in the water, especially when the winds get choppy. You, young man, if you're listening to me, you will call the calm the storm. Calm the storm in your life first, and therefore you can calm the storm in somebody else's life later.
And the church said,
Man,
amen. Amen. Listen, this has been rich. Y'all, let's do it again soon, okay? Let's do it again soon. Let's do it again soon. If y'all have anything y'all want to talk about, even on my platform, and if you think it's going to enrich our community, I'm open, okay? All right, y'all say good night to Dwyer and Evans, and I'll say good night to y'all, and then we'll be out of here. Thank you all. Appreciate you very much. All right. Y'all, I'm good. That has been a really good conversation tonight. Tonight's been good. Let me share this with you all. Those who don't know, I'll be doing a challenge here real soon. It's free. I ain't charging nobody for it, so don't worry about that. It's called From Stuck to Structured. Okay, it's called From Stuck to Structured. I'm going to talk about my processes, how I changed, and I had to change my way of thinking, and some of the processes I've gone through. So it's going to be a 5-day challenge, 1 hour a day, free. From Stuck to Structured. If you want to be a part of that, I haven't set the date just yet. I will be setting it real soon. But if you want to be a part of that, please, ma'am, please, sir, reach out to me, and we'll make that available to you. Okay. All right. So we've had fun tonight. Tonight we asked the question, who taught us to suffer in silence? But maybe, just maybe, the real question is, who will teach the next generation how to heal? If we were taught to bottle everything up, then we have to be intentional about teaching something better. We have to teach our sons, our brothers, our friends, and even ourselves that healing is not weakness. Honesty is not weakness. Tears are not weakness. Reaching out for help is not weakness. This conversation is about freedom. Freedom from old scripts, freedom from old pain, freedom from the lie that strength means pretending. You don't have to carry everything by yourself. All right? So let me see what Crystal said. If you are not busy tomorrow night, join us for Coach's Corner hosted by. If I'm not busy, I'm not. I do a class, an AI class on Tuesday nights, but I'm definitely going to be a part of his Bible study. Okay, but I'm out of here. Remember this: the world is changing. I forgot to do this. Hold on. I like to hear a little bit of it because it's just my song. This my music. Hold on, just a little bit. Then I'll leave out. But remember this. Remember this, that the world is changing, but my question for you is, why do you remain the same? Y'all have a good night. I appreciate you all. Hey, if you want to support the podcast, there are ways to support the podcast. There are ways to give at the bottom. I'd appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it so we can keep this going. But appreciate y'all for checking in every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you on next time. Until then, the world is changing. But my question for you is, why do you remain the same? Good night.